Florida is now one of only 2 states that does not require a unanimous jury to impose death sentences for murder convictions. Governor Ron DeSantis signed that legislation into law yesterday, and Taylor Levesque is on your side tonight. And Taylor, is it true that Florida is considered the most lenient state to impose the death penalty?
Yes, under this new law, Florida requires at least 8 jurors to agree to oppose death, while Alabama requires at least 10. Death penalty experts expect this law will lead to more appeals by death row inmates. And I spoke to a Florida death row exoneree who says he disagrees with the law and is worried it will silence the jury members who don't favor a death sentence. In one word, Herman Lindsay describes a new Florida law eliminating the use of a unanimous jury before a death penalty can be imposed.
Unfair.
Lindsay spent 3 years on Florida's death row for a 1994 robbery and murder of a pawn shop owner in Fort Lauderdale, but maintained his innocence.
How can I be facing death for something I didn't do?
Lindsay was sentenced to die on an 8-4 vote, but in 2009 he was exonerated when the Florida Supreme Court unanimously ruled his trial was unfair and there was not enough evidence to find him guilty.
Do you let somebody who committed a crime walk, or do you lock up an innocent person? You know, it's a difficult job.
The new law only impacts the sentencing phase of death penalty cases. A death sentence can be recommended if at least 8 jurors agree. If not, then a life sentence without the possibility of parole is handed down.
It should be difficult to sentence someone to death, because that's, the ultimate question, life or death. But in Florida, these doubtful cases could result in executions.
Richard Dieter with the Death Penalty Information Center says this law was influenced by the case of Parkland High School shooter Nicholas Cruz and the jury's decision to not sentence him to death.
There was at least some doubt about whether he should be sentenced to death, and so because Florida required unanimity, he did not get a death sentence.
In a statement, Governor DeSantis says, quote, once a defendant in a capital case is found guilty by a unanimous jury, one juror should not be able to veto a capital sentence. Lindsay says he didn't know anything about the death penalty until he faced it. Now that he's on the other side, he says he isn't in favor of the death sentence.
Life in prison is way worse, because that person has to think about what they did to that victim that brought them there for the rest of their lives. Also, they have to dodge violence in the prison. They have to dodge sexual assaults in the prison. You know, they can't go out and live a normal life.
The Death Penalty Information Center says Florida is one of the largest death rows in the country, and it comes with a cost. Dieter says it costs about $40,000 a year to keep someone in prison for life, and it costs millions more from the time attorneys are hired and that process, and that comes with appeals all the way through executions. In the studio, Taylor Levesque, First Coast News on your side.